Welcome, folks, in our little mini series of how to be an awesome land investor. And I am speaking with Kathy Nation from Swedish Sugar Land Deals. And Kathy is just so experienced when it comes to negotiation. Kathy, we always see your posts on Facebook of another closing, another one under contract, which is super exciting. So let's help out those people in the land space that might be struggling a little bit with the negotiation side of things, especially when we're looking at buying at a certain price and selling at a certain price. So first of all, tell me, how do you set the expectation with your sellers that you're not going to be offering retail pricing?
Well, one of the first things that we do is my letter does say that I am a licensed real estate agent, but I'm acting as a principal buyer, as an investor in land. And so it's on the letter. I feel that once they read that, they kind of understand I'm not an agent calling to list it at retail. So that kind of first gives us, I feel like a little bit of an explanation, to start off with. And then depending on how the conversation goes, I like to talk a little bit about the comparables that I already know, because again, we're mailing to an area that we're familiar with and we've already sold properties. So I can say, I just recently closed one, same area, it was in the county. Yours has public water, that one did not. It closed around 12.5, so I can have a good conversation. And I find that to be very helpful with the difference between what we are. And I let them know right up front, 100% transparent, that I am not the end buyer. I do buy properties in certain, circumstances, but it's more typical that we have an end buyer already waiting or a buyer builder that's already, waiting.
Yeah, I'm fully behind you with that. I do feel these days that transparency and honesty is really key when we're having those conversations with sellers, which is great. So what do you ask about with regards to things like the title and the property to set the scene on the things that you negotiate on? Because you just mentioned then, yours has utilities or water, the other one didn't, vice versa. What do you typically talk about there to help manage that expectation?
As far as the owner and the taxes not being in my name yet, or what is your
Yeah, so if you're going to be negotiating with somebody on a property, what are the things that you might ask about to set the scene on, hey, is it cleared? Is it not cleared?
oh,
You got any
are you
back
the
taxes?
only, yes,
Are
are you
you
the
the only
decision
owner?
maker?
Yeah,
That's
all of
right.
that stuff that it ends up being negotiation points that you could use to either build the price up or pull it back down.
Got it. Understand. And who are the owners typically? Because I've learned this just in a recent deal. The Mrs. Brown shows on the tax record, but Mr. and Mrs. were still on the deed because he had passed 20 years ago, but she did not know he was still on the deed because she went to the tax office to have it changed. So I generally ask, I see, Mr. Smith, that you are the owner of the property according to tax records. Are there any other owners? Yeah, not sellers necessarily, owners on the property. That's what I say to them. And so, and I'll say this because the tax info indeed aren't always the same. And a lot of them, that's something they don't even know either. And so that kind of offers up to, well, yes, my brother and I did buy it together, but he's passed. And a few years back, we took care of that. Or, and so they usually, with a couple questions, who are the owners, because the tax information isn't the same as the deed or the title, then that's how I start that question off.
Right. So that's about the owners. What do you then ask about to do with the property that could be negotiation points?
As far as if you do know, have you been to the property lately? That usually is the first time. If they say, oh no, I haven't seen it in 30 years, or oh, I've driven by and I have someone mow the grass often. My neighbor told me so and so, things like that. So I do ask, are there any improvements? And that usually explains. I had one the other day that the property line or the aerial view showed a dwelling on his parcel, and he confirmed there wasn't one. So we're in the middle of trying to find that out. So when I say, have you had any improvements, that usually will cover if they put a shed on it or if there's water or septic or anything yet.
Right. And do you ask about things like, is it cleared? Is it buildable? Is there utilities on the street? Because those are also tactics that can be used to negotiate price up or down as well. And
Yes,
set the
normally
expectation with the person too.
that's right. And normally, depending on who, if it's the wife and the husband and he's passed and she's already said she hasn't seen it in 30, 40 years, I don't usually go on to ask that because I feel like I'm asking something that she doesn't know anyway. And then I
Yeah,
kind of feel like
exactly.
I'm, making her feel, I've done that a few times via email and they're almost not offended, but they're kind of bothered because they don't know the answer. And so it
Yeah.
doesn't, start off the conversation well. So I usually just ask the general if there's utilities or if there's a paved road, especially if there's access. And I always kind of peek at it first. And if it looks landlocked, I'll ask that, but I'm not going to ask somebody that has a lot in a subdivision if it has access and sound.
Yeah. So again, it's all context, right? I think context
Correct.
of what's going on before you ask the
That's right.
content about things
That's
too,
right.
to show that integrity. I like that. That's great. So what's your follow-up process with your leads to keep the negotiation going? Like often we don't close on the first call or maybe even the second call. So how do you keep that going, Kathy?
We've got some work to get better at that, along with the next part that we're going to cover is the second and third offers consistently after that. We have a system, but it needs to be nurtured a little bit more fluently or a little bit more, consistently. We have a great system. Nobody falls through the crack, but the amount of buyers that we have to the amount of sellers that we have more of one. And so the focus needs to be on the sellers even more so without seemingly, pesky or desperate. But I literally do have buyers, so I don't have a problem calling and saying, I just wanted to make sure you had the offer. I know I emailed it a few weeks ago. So we use all form of follow-up, regular phone, text and email. And my clients for the most part are phone call. They want to be, reached out by phone.
Yeah. And I think that comes back to our first interview, right? With asking them at that first juncture, how do you prefer to be communicated with? Is it
Mhm.
email or phone? And then making sure that we're utilizing that to reach out to the person in the way that they want. So let's go on to that offer process that you mentioned earlier, because I think as well, there's a lot of people out there that will send out an offer, and if they don't hear back, they kind of let it go. But what I love about you is, no, we're talking about offer 2, offer 3. We've got dedicated follow-up processes because if the person is interested, let's keep nurturing them. So talk to me about that. What's your timing between them and how do you structure that?
We have set it up to be every 14 days at once, especially if we're regular mailing before we send another type of communication or follow up. We at least give 14 days in between when we mailed it until we follow up with the second and the third offer. Now, each time, most of our deals, the second and third offer has been a price increase, but not always. Sometimes I'm just getting it to them to say, hey, we still are interested. Wasn't sure if you got our offer. And I am emailing and regular mailing on both the
Great.
same customer. So
Yeah.
I think but that when I said we can get a little better at it, just meaning the conversion rate, I'd like to be a little bit better in if we do 25 offers, I want 20 of them.
Love it. Love it. And consistency is key. And I love it's like 14 days. I know people that wait months to send out offer 2. And I'm like, nope, if you're already in conversation, let's keep that conversation going. So we did mention in video 1 that you are very open and honest and transparent about your exit strategies with your customers. Let's go a little deeper with that now. How do you ensure that transparency with you're not the end buyer is still really consistent in your communications?
Yes, I try to, saying that I'm completely transparent. I am local. We buy local so they can reach out to my closing attorney for verification and credibility, which is huge for me. And I've offered that. I'm a Better Business Bureau member, so I also let them know you can take a look at some of my past sellers to see the type of business that we are. We're kind of the middleman, you know, and I make it real easy to understand without sounding you know, like I'm not going to have anything to do with it. I'm going to get your contract, you know, and then I'm going to flip it to this other person. I just like to make sure that they know I'll stay in complete contact with you, though, if you
Yeah.
have any questions. That's kind of what, you know, my thing is. And then
Yeah.
I tell them I already have a buyer's list of builders and, you know, specific to their area.
Love it. It's almost like you're the custodian and the caretaker of the transaction, and really making sure that you keep them top of mind throughout that as well. Kathy, thank you so much for sharing all of your insights around negotiation and how you really keep in touch with your sellers. I know it makes a huge difference to your conversion rate. And yeah, I hope that people listening to that have really taken a few little hints and tips to help them on their journey as well.
Thank you so much.